And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, now on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Florist Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at the BarryFosterShow@gmail.com. You can check out our YouTube page at the Barry Foster Show, as we'll be putting up new programming on a regular basis, trying for Monday through Friday. And please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very helpful. In the studios again, the handsome and exciting John Larsen. John and I shared a very exciting 2 hours last night at South Florida State College with Don Elwell for his annual budget presentation. What did you think about that?
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting. As I mentioned earlier, I was happy to see most all of the administrators, if you will, or department heads and so on there to speak up if they were called upon and give some, sage advice, if you will, and so on. So, I mean, there was a few things that I learned. They can't, like he said last night, they can't dive into the weeds too deep because we'd be there for 4 days trying to go over the numbers, how many paper clips did this office buy, that kind of thing. So I understand that. So they give you an overview of what it looks like. How much money are we planning on spending? Or people, they put in there, this is how much I want, this is how much I want. They got all that. So now comes the arm wrestling about, okay, that's nice, but we're looking at 5%. So what are you looking at?
The folks that came in, he had a new way. Usually he would do like show of hands. How many Republicans, how many Democrats, how many Avon Park. But he had a new thing because most all of us have phones. And he could survey over the phone and get percentages over he didn't get numbers of people. It's like 52% or 17%. It was just the percent of the people who voted, and I didn't have a real good idea of how many people actually voted in those things.
But I know he mentioned at some point it was roughly around, 55 people, I think.
Yeah, there was around 55 people, and I'm going to say at least a dozen of them were county employees who were there looking after their own best interest.
Right.
Yes. So, or as he would put it, to make sure that he was giving the right information. I was rather unhappy that the county budget is not online for people to look at, because it's I think to me it's a fool's errand to say, what do you think about the budget, when all you know about what the budget is what you may have seen on a county, a budget workshop, or what has been printed in the paper, which is, I guess, nothing. And so, it's hard for you to decide. The county budget really includes the county itself, but there's also the sheriff's office, there's also the supervisor of elections, there's the property appraiser, there's the tax collector, and the clerk of the courts, all of which are, duly elected constitutional officers whose budget comes under the county, but the county has no control over.
No.
And so to invite us in and say, how much do you know about the budget? How happy are you with it? Well, we don't know anything about the budget except what we may have heard, which may or may not be true.
I guess the big date that they were pointing to was, July 15th?
Yes,
at 9
that's
o'clock.
the next one.
Yeah, at 9 o'clock, I believe it is, that they're going to have an in-depth discussion of the budget. And, they were asking for, the public to attend down at the county building on Commerce Avenue and whatnot to actually see the numbers and hear what department heads and possibly constitutional officers and that will be there and speak for their area.
Well, he was unhappy that people didn't show up at Tuesday morning's budget workshop for the county because they worked on the CIS budget. I would bet you that if you had surveyed the people in that room, the 40-plus people who were regulars, they wouldn't know what the CIS budget was, much less feel like they could comment on it. And so I was very, very disappointed in that. Now, let me tell you, I was happy that he does this. Since I've been in Highlands County since the late 1980s, I've seen 3 commissioners do this. The first one was Archie Summers, who would go set up a card table and 2 card table chairs at the Publix grocery mart on a Saturday morning. One in Avon Park, once in Sebring, once in Lake Placid. And he had a hand-lettered sign that said, Archie Summers, County Commissioners, talk to me. And you could go up and talk to him about whatever you wanted to talk to him about.
Right.
Now, David Flowers, who was the the county commissioner for District 1, which is Avon Park, which is where we are now, would hold periodic town hall meetings at the city hall down here. And if you wanted to have and he would have a little agenda to talk about, and then if you wanted to talk to him, and then you have Don Elwell, who started the first part of his career as commissioner down at the Kenilworth Lodge, and then has moved since that time, and now is up at the South Florida State College. And his meeting at the University Center also doubled as the budget presentation for the residents. And he was very disappointed because he only got about 40 people that showed up that seemed interested enough in some of that. He does a great job. He offers free pizza. Some people come for the free pizza. There have been people who have eaten the free pizza and left before the meeting. Yeah. Okay, and I've seen that. I think at some point, in addition to it being a presentation, it's somewhat of a sales job. You know, saying, well, we have to do this and we have to do that. And we're spending money on this and we're spending money on that. And as an interested citizen and a former newsman, I guess sort of an ersatz newsman now for our broadcast here together, I did ask him, is there anything the county has suggested releasing back into the private sector? And the answer is that's no.
No, right. Yeah.
You know?
Well, the one question that I asked, because I had looked at some information, you know, when they talked about the new cell and what it was going to cost.
That's for the landfill.
And the landfill. And I looked back at the history of the population. In 1998, we were like 98,000. This year, that's predicated that we're going to be at 112,000. So we've gained 13% of our population in the last 15 years. But the answer to my question was, do you count the increased population as the cell and the lifespan of the cell? And he said last night, the guy that's in charge of it, that they add in 3% of population increase every year.
As Bob Diefendorf.
Right.
Yeah.
So consequently, they obviously have the increased population covered.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that over that same course of time, recycling has changed quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
There used to be a lot of recycling. Now, I understand that the recycling market is dried up, and even the most lucrative, which would be newspaper and aluminum, even that is not that good. So the idea that we should have recycling and it doesn't end up in the landfill, a lot of times, and you and I have both seen the videos where people are mandated to separate their goods. The guy comes along, he dumps them all in the same truck and hauls them away to the landfill.
Well, I do know I was up in Lake County for a few days here this past week, and they still recycle. They absolutely recycle. They have the 2 bins like we've got. All the recycled stuff goes in the recycle bin. So they're still in a recycling mode up in Lake County.
Well, I would like to know that let's say plastics. How much of that plastic is melted down and sold off and used for or the glass goods or the paper goods? I know that they send it to a recycling center. What happens to it after it's there? I don't know the answer to that question. And Don's been, because we have had a real sweetheart deal for our trash collection, which is coming to a close, and you better hold on to your wallet because it's going to get a lot more expensive very quickly.
Well, they've got a new company now that took over for waste management, I think it was, and so on. So I don't know the name of the new company, but I guess they've been doing it for a little while now, and they'll be doing it up until this contract expires and a new one takes over.
Well, when they signed this contract for 10 years, recycling was going on. Then the bottom fell out of the recycling market, and Waste Management came on more than one occasion and asked if they could renegotiate the contract. And the commissioner said, "No, we like this sweetheart deal. We're gonna keep this sweetheart deal." And so yeah, the sweetheart deal is going to remain the same.
And Waste Management said adios.
Yeah, but I think they folded up. You know, and I've seen this on many occasions where a company happened right here in Avon Park. A company had done some work for the city. The city was unhappy with it. The company folded up, and they went to get their damages. Said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that company no longer exists." Well, you have a new company with the same people. Yeah, but that's a new company. You can't sue this new company. You can only sue the old company, which doesn't exist anymore. I mean, Donald Trump is not the only one who knows how business works, you know, and these guys have made a cottage industry out of dealing with governmental agencies, and knows how governmental agencies work. But I think that you're right. Don did a good job in presenting the budget, and did some discussion about some of the constitutional officers. He did a good job talking about some of the constitutional officers, even though they were in the room.
Other than Eric, I think. Yeah, well, I don't. Were the rest of them there?
No,
No,
him.
I know the sheriff was there.
And you know, next week we have Karen Healy coming to the Highlands County Tea Party, and her office, it was very interesting, and you've been with the Supervisor of Elections office for many years, but under Penny Ogg, it didn't seem to go up much. Under Karen Healy, it has gone up 144%, and I'm wondering if that's the machines.
Well, some of the things that they have to do, I know from talking to Karen during this election cycle and afterwards, that is mandated by the state, and or even maybe if it comes to federal elections, maybe some of the federal government things are mandated now that weren't before. That may be a piece of it. I don't know for certain, but that would be one of my guesses, is that some of it's mandated things and that's what the constitutional officers, they take their orders from Tallahassee.
A lot.
They work for Tallahassee, so a lot of things that they do are outside of the purview of the county commissioners. They're mandated to do certain things. You have to incorporate this, you have to incorporate that. The county commissioners have nothing to do with that. So they kind of work for two bosses.
Well, but there are some like Jerome Kazabowski, who's the clerk of the courts. His office does a lot of IT work, computer work for the county commission.
Yes.
So some of their budget arguably is county commission budget. But I did ask Commissioner Elwell a couple of things. Number one, I did ask him if he'd ever had a citizen come before them with a suggestion that the commissioner said, you know what, that's a good idea. Maybe let's get so and so at such and such a department to do. And he said yes. I said, well, when did that occur? Well, then he couldn't remember. And then later he quantified that by saying, well, they came to me privately. And I said, no. When was the last time someone came to the podium and said, gosh, I wish you'd do this? Because as a newsman for better than 3 decades, I never saw that. I never saw a citizen come forward with an idea that the commission took and accepted. And most of the time, they give you your 3 minutes, 5 minutes, however many, and then they just say, okay, now, where were we now? Let's go back to what we were taking care of. And I did suggest also, the commission has, like a giant amoeba, has absorbed some things that were in the private sector, and one of them is the Economic Development Commission, which was the IDA EDC. The EDC, the Economic Development Commission, was a private sector group of local business people who wanted to see more business come, and they worked to bring more business in. And it was all done through private sector donations. And they had the IDA, which was the Industrial Development Authority, which was the governmental arm of the EDC. Same guys, same chairs, had a different power, who could write grants and do things, the governmental things that a private agency couldn't do. At one point, and I'm not going to name any names, although I'm itching to name them, they decided that they would incorporate that into the county. And they incorporated that into the county. And I think that is one thing that they could let, even if it's symbolic, even if it's only a few $1 million out of the $205 million budget, even if it's just a couple of $1 million, I think it's a start in the right direction.
I think the one question I've got, and I didn't get to ask it last night, I know they're building the new jail. It's going to add another, I think, 90-some beds or whatever it is, which tells us something, that there's an increase in crime, okay, because they've got more guys to lock up.
Oh, more people, more crime.
Right, yeah, and so on. So, with that, is that money spent by the county commission, and have they budgeted for that? Because this is the second expansion that I'm aware of within the last, 6-8 years? And so that tells you that, we've got, the only reason you have additional jail cells is if you got more bad people to put in them.
Yeah.
and so on, just like what the Border Patrol is doing today with Alligator Alcatraz, okay? So that being the case, what is the root cause of the increase in crime? Is it
More people.
Well, is it more people, or is it the same people committing more crimes? What kind of crimes are being committed?
When they had the 1, 2, 3, the 20, 10, 20 life, when they started putting career criminals behind bars, the crime rate dropped,
Right.
because there's a lot of crime recidivism. But the law enforcement will tell you, with new people, you bring in 100 new people, a certain percentage of them, let's say 5%, out of 100, 5 of them are going to be criminals. They're going to do more things that law enforcement has to pay attention to, and there's going to be a certain percentage who are mentally unstable, who also cause law enforcement to have to be called out. So, yeah, with more people, more crime, but I think recidivism is a good thing. And I believe, to your earlier question, the county owns the jail, but the sheriff's office runs it, I think is the way that it works. When I first came in the middle 1980s, they just built a new floor on the jail, and they had a bunch of empty cells. They didn't know what to do. So they started renting them out to Hardy County, to bringing their people in. It wasn't long before they were all full with Highlands County people and more.
I guess this new portion of the jail is supposed to separate the females from the males, too, is what I think I understand.
Yes.
So
Well, they're already separated.
Yeah, but this is going to separate them even more.
Yeah.
And so on. And plus take in additional people, I assume, because I thought it was 96 or 98 was the count of the new beds that they're going to have in the new jail. But, that's a good question. I mean, they pointed, when you look at the dollar amount, the sheriff's department by far spends the largest amount.
Yes.
Okay, but you have to look at it. What is the main purpose of government? Protect and then safety, and that's only done through your police force,
Public safety,
whatever it's
yes.
called,
Yeah.
whether it's local police or sheriff or whatever it is. But that is one of their main functions of, I don't care what size government you've got, your main goal is to protect the people.
And well, the thing is, and I have very little problem with anything that they want to spend for law enforcement. Police, fire, ambulance, okay? Landfill is another one. But after that, it gets real sketchy. I don't think the county has any business doing anything with housing. Housing is housing, and let it go, and I think that there's a lot of things they're spending money on that they may be mandated by the state, but they can do the least amount. And they did that with the housing authority for a while. It was down to the least amount that they could possibly do. And I think that that would be something that the commission should really give a good hard look at. Because a lot of times once they put something in, they don't pay any more attention to it. Commissioner Elwell brought up parks last night. And I have suggested that he says, well, it's a quality of life thing. Well, who's using these parks? How much are they being used? I would prognosticate to you that I would opine that I believe that the sheriff's office has both video and audio monitoring of those parks to make sure that there's no illegal activity going on there.
Right.
They could probably tell you how much those parks are being used. If they're being used a lot, great. That's great. They'll leave them on. But if there's never anybody there, is that something that we want to continue to do?
I don't know if down on, is it 98 going towards Okeechobee? 98. There's that major park and fishing
Yes, there's a
ramp.
huge park down there.
And we used to go there quite often on our bikes. We'd ride down Okeechobee. We'd
Your
stop there.
motorcycles,
That was
yeah.
a stop, yes. And whatnot. And there was practically maybe a couple fishermen. That was it. There was
Yes.
nobody else there. And it's a beautiful spot.
When they first put it in, the people from Spring Lake and Loretta, they said, "Oh, there's going to be parties down here. It's going to be a horrible gathering place for
Yep.
malcontents." Nothing could be further. When we would go, there'd be nobody there.
Nobody,
I mean,
right.
you had your choice of the picnic tables,
Yep.
and it was pristine. It was well taken care of. So they spent no small amount of time, money, and effort making sure that the weed whacking was done around. I mean, it was a very nice park, but it didn't look like there was any use. Well, if there's nobody using it, then why do we have it? Why do we
Right.
have it?
I mean, that was, after we went down there a few times and looked around, you thought, this is a really nice spot. even if you're not a fisherman, it's a really nice spot for a kind of a, lunch on the outside, if you will.
Should that not be on the tax rolls?
Right. I mean, that's the thing.
Should that not be a for-profit resort?
And so on. So it was just, but I understand when they point to the sheriff's department as the largest user of funds. I understand that because they also said, and this is very true, there's no other department in the county that loses people as fast as the sheriff's department.
Since I've come, people would go to work for the Avon Park Police Department, the Sebring Police Department, Lake Placid Police Department. They would, because they were working there, they could get their education for free. So they would go up here to the law enforcement courses at the college. They would get their certifications, and they would become detectives or whatever their specialty was, crime scene investigators. Ah, yes, Amtrak, good. And then they would go to the sheriff's office. Well, while they were at the sheriff's office, they would continue their education. And then they would go to a bigger sheriff's office, like
Polk County.
Yeah, Polk County or Orange County.
Yep.
Yep. They would go up. There was a young man here, real good guy, worked for the Avon Park Fire Department. Did the same thing. He went to work up in for Disney, and he's making plenty of money now.
Well, I'll tell you, there's also one of the things a while back, anyhow. They lost a number of officers to the Indian reservation as police officers.
Yes.
Because they got paid much more than they were being paid as a local Highlands County sheriff.
So that's right. And to try to keep people, they have to bump the salaries.
Right.
And with fire now that we're in a county-wide fire department, all right, who was the first one to come in? The unions. So now they have union firefighters, union wage, union benefits, and so those costs have gone up exponentially as well.
Yep.
So I understand that, and the commissioner was, well, it's costing us a lot more to do this and that, and I said, I hate to tell you this, but it's costing us too, and so if you cannot, what they need to do, and I've talked about this rollback now, hashtag rollback now, going to the rollback rate and saying you need to live within a certain amount of dollars. When you've gained a lot of weight over the holidays, the first thing they do is they limit the amount you take in, limit the amount of your calories to help you get back down. I think that we need to limit the amount of dollars that we're spending and find places to cut. In fact, I guess we'll have to talk about this tomorrow, but the Supreme Court has just cleared the way for Donald Trump and his administration to have, I think the term is massive governmental layoffs. And that is the government has gotten too big. This government that I've seen, when I came, the budget was $46 million. Okay? It's 205 now. This government has, like all the governments, city councils, the school board, the county commission, they've all grown themselves. The state government has grown itself. And one of the things people say is, well, isn't there a governmental program for that? And my answer is, well, don't you think we should find a program for that in the private sector? And so I think the next, as you point out, the next meeting is going to be the 15th, and I would July. There are 5 county commissioners. There's Kevin Roberts. There's Christopher Campbell, there's Scott Kerouac, there's Arlene Tuck, and of course Don Elwell. And I would begin talking to them about where are you looking to reduce because we're going to have a new you pointed this out earlier, we're going to have a new landfill cell. That's almost $13 million. I think 12.9 is what he said. So they know that expenditure is coming. What is the offset? Are they looking for offsets to reduce the impact on that to residents? Archie Summers, who I used to say was a patron saint of my program, used to ask this question: how much is it going to cost and who's going to pay for it? When anybody brought something before the commission, how much is this going to cost and who's going to pay for it? And I think those are very interesting questions.
Well, the other thing is that, the tipping fees are the money that they take in at the landfill. In other words, you take a load of garbage out there, you have to pay to dump it. And I assume they charge by ton or
yes,
pound or whatever it is, and so on. So I don't know, are they still taking garbage net in from outside the county?
No.
No.
No,
Okay,
that is disallowed.
Okay,
Only the garbage in the county, yeah.
Okay, so the local trash hauler and other people that carry things out there like yard waste, a lot of people that trim yards and trees and all that take their yard waste to the landfill and they have to pay to dump it and so on. So that's their, and are there rates? That's the other thing that didn't get mentioned. Maybe it doesn't matter, but what are the rates to dump? Is it per pound, per ton? What do they pay?
It is per pound, but it ends up being per ton.
Yeah.
Because of the because of the trucks. Not much goes down by the pound. Although there are private individuals who drop construction and demolition debris and other kinds of debris. So, yeah, it's by the pound. How much you bring in is how much they're going to charge you to dump it, and that's why they would like to see recycling, because that would keep stuff arguably out of the landfill.
Right. Yep.
But I don't know what the as far as I have been able to ascertain, it costs more to recycle than you will make, except maybe in aluminum. But it costs more to recycle paper, and the question that I have asked many times, and they furtively look at each other and say, well, how much recycled goods does the Highlands County Commission use? That's the response I get. And we don't. I said, well, I mean, do you have recycled metal in your paper clips? I mean, do you have recycled paper in your computer paper that you use? Are you using recapped tires? What kind of recycled goods are you using? Stuff that's made out of recycled plastic for benches? I don't know. What kind of recycled are you leading by example? And the answer has just pretty much been, well, they don't even know that. Mm-hmm. But they want to. There's a big push, and I think the final result was, should we keep the recycling program going? And it was 56% no and 44% yes. So it was very close to halfway. Although the no's, in an election for a county commissioner, you would be glad to win 56 to 44. Mm-hmm. So the no's had it, but there is a big push by people who would, because they feel like they're doing something.
Well, even though recycling went away a year or two ago, I still use the green can for plastic and tin cans only. Mm-hmm. That's all I put in there. But when that can is full, and it takes me about a month or so to fill the can. When the can is full, I push it out to the curb, and he dumps it along with the garbage.
Yeah.
So I'm recycling, but I'm not recycling, okay? So.
Well, when we first got our recycle bin, it sat beside the house with the instructions still taped to it, okay?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it sat there untouched because we don't. Our idea of recycling is giving things to the thrift shop and then going and buying other things at a thrift shop,
right,
and using them until they're used up,
right?
So that or that we're not using them anymore, and then we give them back to the thrift shop so they can make some money on it. The second blessings over here at First United Methodist or wherever. So that was our idea of recycling. It wasn't until after the hurricanes, they said, well, you can use your recycling bin for regular trash to get it out of there. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, fine. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. And so we could, so then we used it for that, and we've continued to use it for that because they haven't gone back to recycling.
Well, it'd be interesting to see, I know he mentioned last night that we still have, and I knew this back in the time, but I didn't even know it was still going, 3 local places where you can take recycled material, and I guess they have someone there that helps you recycle them or segregate them or whatever, and so on. But does that stuff then ultimately go to a recycle location?
I'd like to know. We might try to get Bob Diefendorf on the phone and ask him that, or somebody to ask what happens to the recycled goods once. And yes, there are 3 locations where you can. Used to that they had them, but they would find people were diving into the aluminum cans and taking them out and taking them themselves down to the recycle bin, and they would throw in stuff that they would throw like a car windshield in with the glass, and that was not recyclable.
Well, I remember going to when they still had the big bins, and that's where you took the recycled stuff. And I was very religious about separating, cardboard, glass, paper, all that, and doing what I was supposed to do. But I remember some lady who used to be there, and she would literally dive into the cardboard thing so she could pick out magazines that people had thrown in there.
Oh, really?
Because she liked to read magazines, so instead of buying magazines or subscribing to them, she dove in the bin to get those.
Yeah, we call that the 100% off store. And a lot of thrift stores, if you go in there, they'll just give you the magazines. We've donated, because a lot of them have everything except the 2 recipes that my wife wanted. And they've been ripped out. But we got into this recycling, talking about our budget.
Right.
I'd like to know if you're listening to this outside of Highlands County, do you look into your budget? What is your budget like in your county? Do you have these kinds of presentations? Are you interested in the least in going to them? Do they make it easy for you to figure out what the county is spending money on? And do you have, and I would like even here in Highlands County to find out if you have thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for making the county budget more realistic. Let's use that word.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and what is a good number?
Yeah.
That's the question. What is a good, I know they're talking, 5% increases this year over last year. That was I guess that's their arbitrary goal is 5%. But I'm pretty sure that by the looks of things, unless something dramatic happens, the sheriff is going to be well beyond 5%.
Yes.
Now, the other departments may have to try and help him make that up, but maybe not. I guess we'll just see.
And there are ways, I think, to reduce the impact on local taxpayers, and I use that word specifically because the question was asked again last night about impact fees, which are if you're going to build a new house in Highlands County or if you're going to build a business in Highlands County, what impact does it have? For instance, let's say I put the Barry Foster drive-through in to have a drive-through restaurant. Mm-hmm. Well, what impact is that going to have on the highways? What impact is that going to have on business? And a certain percentage goes to parks, to road repairs, to other. There are others. I think there was 10 different revenue. And when they first put the impact fees in last time, they were at a smidgen. They were at like 10% of what they should have been. And there was a huge hue and cry that it was going to stifle construction. Interestingly enough, it was a coincidence that just as Highlands County introduced the impact fees, there came a huge slowdown in construction across the United States. And I had a guy who used to get on me and say, "Did you see what happened when we put on the impact fees?" I said, "Pete, the impact fees were so onerous. Not only did it stop construction here, it stopped construction all across the nation." Just because of what we did, and he'd give me that little wry smile, I said, yes, in California, because of what we did, they've even stopped in California putting in new places like that, and I think that somebody is going to pay that impact, whether it's us or whether it's them.
Well, what did he say last night? I think only 3 counties in all 67 in Florida do not have impact fees, and Highlands County is one of the 3.
One of them.
So that tells you that we're on the downside of that equation. So if they want to really get things, I really believe that if you're building new construction, you have the responsibility. If there has to be a turning lane put in or whatever it is, sewer system, water system, that's your responsibility.
And knowing what we know about government, it would really be a tool to help them craft the kind of development they want to. Because if I wanted to put in the Barry Foster slag heap nuclear energy plant, they could assess me for everything I want. But if I wanted to put in the very benign Barry Foster senior citizen hiring crutch manufacturing factory, and it was going, and something they really wanted, why they could waive those fees to get me in there, to get in the kind of, and that is something that I've seen other governmental entities do, waive certain fees as kind of a carrot to draw people in. So, but we'll see how that goes, because as Commissioner Elwell pointed out last night, he was only one commissioner out of 5. Okay, so he has to get 2 others to agree with him in open meeting to do anything. And I was, as you, I was very disappointed that other commissioners they couldn't do it together because that would be a violation of the Sunshine Law. Yeah, I get that. But I have seen many commissioners come and go who had no interest in talking to the citizens whatsoever.
Yeah, that's just amazing because, you're out there asking the citizens for your vote come election time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and this is typical of some politicians, is like, I'm only interested in you at voting time. Other than voting time, don't bother to call.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how malleable and friendly they become during an election year when they have legitimate opposition. What can I do for you?
Right.
Oh my God! That's the time. That's the time you got to lean into them a
Right.
little
One
bit.
one question too that was mentioned last night, but we didn't get a lot of discussion about it. I know that Jerome is tasked with investing county funds.
Jerome Kazowski is the
Yeah,
clerk of the
Clerk
courts.
of courts, right. Investing county funds. And he does a really good job. I mean, his return on investment is spectacular, okay, when you look at the numbers. But, and I think they mentioned last night, I thought I heard him say over $100 million that Jerome has. All right, where does that money come from, and what does that $100 million, is that part of the rainy day fund, or if not, what is it?
We'll have to find that out. I
Right.
don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
We've had Jerome in to talk about some of those things, and
Right.
I think that we'll have to have him again, or we'll get him on the phone.
Right.
One of the things, where there's several things we're working on. One is to go live, like we used to do back in the olden days, and the other is to get a phone hookup so that we can have interviews over the phone of people like Jerome Kazabowski and even some of the statewide people. I've been working on some of them, and I want to do a series on Made in America, and I know you're very high on that, and I'd like to get that done too. So we'll work on that as well. But we're out of time for today. Don't
Wow.
worry, John.
Wow.
We'll come back tomorrow. We've got more stuff to do, and we really appreciate all of our new subscribers, all the people who listen in. In fact, I had a guy ask me today, I handed him a card, he goes, "What time are you on?" I said, "Anytime you want, pal." You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded at the Ridge Florist Studios, located in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, you can put them in the comments below. We'll get back to you right away. Or you can drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Please subscribe, like, and subscribe our broadcast, and also join our pages at the Barry Foster Show Facebook and Instagram page. As we continue to search for truth, justice, and the American way, Barry Foster and John Larsen, and we'll see you next time.